بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So we are still in the chapter on wet nursing, and last week we spoke about the integrals, about the pillars of wet nursing. We spoke about the child. We spoke about the person who does the breastfeeding, and we also spoke about the milk. So basically the child has to be less than 2 years of age. If the child is more than 2 years, then the rulings of wet nursing or breastfeeding is not established. The relationship of nasab in terms of mahram cannot be established if the child is more than 2 years of age. And the person who does the breastfeeding or the person whom the milk was taken out from must be a person who is alive at the moment where the milk was taken from. And we also mentioned that the breastfeeding itself is not a condition. If a person collects any milk and then gives any to a child 5 times and more, then the child becomes the mahram. So these are some of the things that we spoke in our last lesson. So inshallah now we will straight away go into where we stopped. We have come into the page 96. Fair enough. Or 98. The outcomes of suckling. The outcomes of suckling. So can someone read?
The outcomes of suckling. The suckling infant will be the wet nurse's child when the necessary conditions of suckling are met.
Now all the conditions are met. A woman gives any milk to a child, and the child is less than 2 years of age, and 5 times in the khamsa rada'at, that's what we mentioned, different timings and not within the same timing. If all these conditions are met, then this particular woman is considered to be murdi'ah. In Arabic we call her murdi'ah, the person who gives the milk. So the relationship of mahram is established. So now when we say this is the wet nurse child, the wet nurse child, considered to be like her own children. Aywa.
This will result in him becoming a mahram, unmarriageable kin to her ancestors, her descendants and her siblings. So
not only to her but also the ancestors, meaning for example this woman, she has any mother, parents. The parents also becomes the grandparents of this child. The grandparents in terms of wet nursing. And likewise, the siblings of this woman is considered to be the aunties and the uncles of this child. The children of this woman is considered to be the siblings of this child, and so on and so forth. It is the same ruling as siblings or children from nasab, exactly the same. Aywa.
The infant will also become a mahram to the man who owns the milk if he was her husband, or if she was involved in an ambiguous marriage, or if he has freed her.
Okay, now this thing has to be explained slowly. Okay, now we spoke about the woman who gives the milk. No problem, no issue, easy to understand. But now how do we ascertain the person whom the milk is also attributed to, meaning connected to? So now he said, the infant will also become a mahram to the man who owns the milk. And what is the meaning? To the man who owns the milk, meaning the person whom the milk is from. So for example, there is a woman who does this breastfeeding, and she has a husband. So this milk is from the husband. She becomes impregnated, for example, and then after that, the milk is from the husband, because of the relationship with the husband. So we say that this milk and it goes back and to the husband. So now not only we say the child, there is a relationship and mahram between the child and the woman, but also between the child and the person whose milk and is from. That is the husband. This is the first situation. So he said this infant will also become a mahram to the man who owns the milk if he was the husband. This is the first situation. If he was the husband. But not in all cases that it must be the husband. In some cases it might not be the husband. So now he gave the example of if she is involved in an ambiguous marriage. If she is involved in an ambiguous marriage, we call it watu shubha. Actually this is not a marriage. This is an ambiguous kind of sexual intercourse. An example it will be that if a man for example enters into his bedroom and thinking that the lady that is on the bed is the wife, and he had sexual intercourse with the person, and then it turned out that it is not his wife, somebody else, and she becomes pregnant because of that intercourse. Now this is what we call watu shubha. This is an ambiguous, the translation is not correct. It is ambiguous sexual intercourse, not ambiguous marriage, because there is no marriage. So we need to rectify this. An ambiguous sexual intercourse. So now the woman becomes pregnant. So the child is related to who? To the husband. For example, if this man he has a wife, he had sex sexual intercourse with the woman, thinking that the woman is the wife, but the wife is somewhere else. So now the child is related to the man, correct or not? Is related to the man. Now the person who is not the wife now is pregnant. So now the child is related to the man. So now we say this is a kind of watu shubha, an ambiguous kind of sexual intercourse. So when it comes to the milk, if the woman does breastfeeding, so now we say the milk goes back to the man, even though that man is not the husband. Even though that man is not the husband, is the man the husband to the woman? No, because he mistakenly had sexual intercourse with the woman. Now if the woman breastfeed the child after she delivered the child, if she breastfeed the child, then now when we say the milk belongs to the man. So now there is mahram. When the woman does the breastfeeding, this milk belongs to the man. Not belongs to the husband. If this woman, for example, she has a husband, if she has a husband, the husband has no relationship with the child. But if the person who does that sexual intercourse is the one who has the relationship of mahram with the child due to breastfeeding after the child is delivered. Clear, inshallah? Is there any questions so far? I hope it is clear. This basically just I need to explain doesn't mean the husband. So that is why I need the term who owns the milk. It depends whom the child. Now the child, what you call it, the pregnancy occurs because of who? Who makes the woman pregnant? Like in our way of saying, who makes that woman pregnant? So we said the milk belongs to this person. It may be the husband, it may not be the husband. It may be the husband, and if it is based on marriage, or it is based on ambiguous form of sexual intercourse. That's what he mentioned. But what happens if they do zina? There is another situation. If a man and woman does zina, and then the woman is pregnant, and then after that she delivers the child, and after that she breastfeeds the child. So do we consider the man to be mahram with the child? So what do you think? Can all of you understand the situation? Now two person commit zina. So the woman becomes pregnant. When it comes into zina, is the child any related any to the person? In terms any of mahram? The child is not related, correct? Because it is zina. The child any is not related any to the man. But what happens any if the woman breastfeed? Now any the milk any belongs to who? The milk any belongs to who? Outwardly any belongs to the man, correct or not? Because any the man any is the cause of his pregnancy. So the milk any belongs to the milk any belongs any to the man. But because any of zina, there is no mahram any established, even any with breastfeeding. Clear inshallah. But in terms of ambiguous marriage, yes, it is established. So there is a difference between zina and watu shubha. So let me go back again and into the example of watu shubha. I do not know, today I got some difficulty in explaining. I do not know why, because I'm not really well or something. But now I go back into the same example just now. Watu shubha, ambiguous sexual intercourse. A man and he goes into a room. Now this is the example. And he thought that this is the wife. He had any sexual intercourse with the woman, thinking that was his wife, but it turned out that actually somebody else's wife. This is called ambiguous sexual intercourse. Watu shubha. In Arabic, in Islam, we call it watu shubha. So our ulama, they mention now that if the woman is pregnant with his child, is there mahram or no mahram? Now if we say zina, there is no mahram established, correct or not? But when it comes into watu shubha, that child is related to him, because he does not know. He is forgiven, correct or not? Because he thought that it was his wife. If the woman does any breastfeeding, then because the milk now belongs to him. So now the mahram established based on breastfeeding also. Clear inshallah? This is, so I mentioned the first situation, second situation. First situation is about marriage. Second situation is about ambiguous and sexual intercourse. Third situation is about zina. The fourth situation, the author is saying, is when a person had sexual intercourse with a slave woman. Now this is not any based on marriage, but this is based on milkul yamin. Yani he owns a slave woman and the master had sexual intercourse. And that slave woman is pregnant. That slave woman is pregnant. And she breastfeed the child. Now the milk belongs to the master. So now the mahram is established by the breastfeeding. So when it comes to marriage, when it comes to watu shubha, when it comes to owning slaves and slave woman, all this makes mahram established by breastfeeding. But when it comes to zina, there is no mahram established. Clear inshallah? So maybe we read this again.
The infant will also become a mahram to the man who owns the milk.
Who owns the milk? So this thing you have to underline. The man who owns the milk. Yani the man who becomes the reason for the pregnancy. Because when there is pregnancy, then there is milk, correct, you know? But of course, it is also possible a woman who is not married also has milk. There is a possibility. But usually the case is when she is pregnant and when she delivers a child, then she will have the milk. So now the milk, we have to find out who owns the milk. In normal cases, of course, it is the husband, correct, man? But not all cases it is the husband. It can be watu shubha. It can be because of owning a slave like last time. Aywa?
Who owns the milk if he was her husband, or if she was involved in an ambiguous sexual intercourse, or if he has freed her. If he has freed her, meaning this is called mustawlada. You see, there is a term of a slave woman when the master has sexual intercourse and the slave woman is pregnant. So now, what you call it? The woman will be freed after some time. The woman will be freed, and because she now bears the child of the master. So now the mahram established between the master and the child. So we say this is his child, even though there is no marriage, and it is based on ownership. Now, the link between the milk and the man who impregnated her is not severed, even if the milk remains in her for a very long period.
Even after a long period of time. And for example, a man marries a woman, after that they got a child, and for example, and then after that the man divorced the wife. The man divorced the wife. After the divorce, then the wife breastfeed some other children. Clear? Even after 1 year, even after 2 years, even after 3 years, even after 5 years. Sometimes the milk still remains. Even after the husband had divorced her. And she breastfeeds somebody else. So now mahram is not only established between the child and her, it is also established between the child and him, the previous husband. Why? Because he owns the milk. This is the thing. Understand it, inshallah? He owns the milk. So not necessarily there must be both of them must be still in a marriage. Not necessary. Not necessary. Even though the man he passed away after that. But now mahram is established, correct? Because why? Because he owns the milk. Aywa.
This also includes the reproduction of milk within her after its depletion from her breast, except with a new birth.
Now, for example, a woman after divorce, she married somebody else, but she still continue breastfeeding somebody else's child, for example. So we still say that the milk belongs to who? Now situation, for example, a woman married a man, after that she is pregnant, she delivers a child. And then she does breastfeeding. After that the husband divorces her. So as long as the milk is still present in her, who does the milk belongs to? Belongs to the previous husband. So as long as the milk is there, it belongs to the previous husband. Even after second marriage, meaning she married again. She married again and she continued breastfeeding, for example. And she breastfeed other children. So now mahram is established between the child and her. And mahram is also established between the child and the first husband or second husband. It goes back to the first husband. I hope it is clear, inshallah. Goes back to the first husband. It does not go back to the second husband. Why? Because the milk is from the first husband, not from the second husband. Unless if she is pregnant the second time, meaning from the new husband, from the second husband. Then, after the delivery of the child, the child from the second husband, then now we say the milk belongs to the second husband and not to the first husband. So clear, inshallah? So basically what the daughter is saying, as long as the milk is inside her, we have to trace back. Who does the milk belongs to? This is important because we want to establish mahram. So that we understand who is the mahram of the child. In terms of who owns the milk. Clear, inshallah? Right. If it is not clear, also never mind, and we have to continue so that we can khatam. Continue. But I believe that I explained clearly. I explained it clearly. Now, if you have been attending all the classes, inshallah, it shouldn't be difficult. Now,
the milk before a new birth is linked to the previous man, and the milk after birth is linked to the subsequent man.
Now, linked to the subsequent man. Yani this is the case exactly what I mentioned earlier. Now she after the first marriage, her husband divorced. And she has a child from the first marriage. Now the milk belongs to the first husband. And then she get married the second time. It doesn't mean that when she get married the second time, the milk belongs to the second husband. Not necessarily, because now if she is not impregnated by the second husband, the milk still belongs to the first husband. When does the milk now belongs to the second husband? When she delivers a child. Correct or not? When the birth is linked to the subsequent man. The birth is linked. The new birth. New birth from the second husband. So now when she becomes impregnated from the second husband, and she delivers the child. Now the reproduction of the milk, now who is the cause? The first husband or the second husband? The second husband. So now we say the milk belongs to the second husband. So if she breastfeed other children, now the mahram is established between those children and the second husband, not the first husband. But if we say that the milk is linked to the first husband, then the mahram is established between the child and the first husband, not the second husband. Now,
Therefore, the infant who was breastfed becomes a mahram to the man who is linked to the milk.
who is linked to the milk? So we have to understand the person who is linked to the milk. Sometimes this knowledge is important because nowadays maybe people overlook this. People thought that okay, since she married a new person, then khalas, she does any breastfeeding and everything and it goes back to the second husband. Some people might have this understanding. This is not correct. So we have to understand these rulings. Continue.
This includes his ancestors, descendants, and siblings.
Now, as one we mentioned based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yahrumu min ar-rada'i ma yahrumu min an-nasab. Yani, if the conditions of breastfeeding, 5 times breastfeeding are established, then the woman who does the breastfeeding now is the mother, correct? No? The mother of, in terms of rada'. And the husband, if the milk belongs to the husband becomes the father, correct? No? The husband becomes the father, and their parents becomes their parents becomes the grandparents of the child, and the siblings of the mother becomes the aunties and uncles. Likewise, the siblings of the father becomes the auntie and the uncles of the child, and their children becomes siblings. Correct or not? Their children become siblings to the child. Now, so mahram is established, just like when we speak about nasab. Continue.
The man who is linked to the milk and the wetness become mahram to the nursed infant and the child's descendants only.
And the child descendants only. Does not include his family. Yani, meaning if a woman, what you call it? If a woman breastfeed the child, now there is mahram established between the child and the woman. Mahram is not established between the siblings of the child and the woman. But the child's descendant has a connection with the woman, because now they become what? They become the grandson of the woman. Yani, if the infant who is breastfed, who is wetness, he has any children. Now the children becomes the grandchildren of that woman in terms of wetnessing. Correct or not? But what about the siblings? The siblings has no relationship with the woman. We do not say the siblings of that infant is the child of the woman who breastfeed any one of the brothers or one of the sisters. So this is what the author is saying, that it is linked to the child's descendant only. There's no relation with his other family members. Now,
thus the father of the nursing woman and the man who is linked to the milk, together with their ancestors, become the forefathers of the nursed child.
Clear, inshallah? Everybody clear? Now, alhamdulillah. No need for me to say it again. It's clear. He said the father of the nursing woman. Father of the nursing woman. And who is this? Yani, the father of the woman who does the wet nursing. The father of the woman who does the wet nursing now becomes the grandfather of the child. Correct? No? Aywa. Likewise, the man who is linked to the milk, the ancestors, all becomes any mahram. Continue.
Their mothers become the nursed child's foremothers.
Their mothers, of who? Mothers of the person who does the breastfeeding becomes the grandmother.
Their children become the nursed child's siblings.
Their children becomes the siblings. Aywa.
The siblings of the wetness become the maternal uncles and aunts of the nursed child.
Now, clear, inshallah. If everything is clear, we just go on. If you have any question, you can ask, no problem.
The siblings of the man who is linked to the milk become the paternal uncles and aunts of the nursed child. Therefore, the above mentioned siblings mean brothers, sisters, paternal uncles, paternal aunts, maternal uncles, maternal aunts.
Now, so this is what we mentioned. And basically, everyone who is related to the woman who does the breastfeeding, his family, and likewise pertaining to the man whom the milk is linked to, also he becomes his family members. Now, the ancestors and also the siblings, and so on. Continue.
A poem has been written to explain the consequences of nursing. The mahram of the wetness extends to her ancestors, her descendants, her siblings from the middle, and to the one who is linked to the milk is the same as mentioned. And for the nursed child, the mahram only extends to his descendants.
Now, so he said the mahram of the wetness extends to the ancestors. Ancestors and those who are on top. Her descendant meaning her children and grandchildren, also related to him. And then her siblings and from the middle, this is called hawashi, siblings. Yani meaning the woman's brothers. Now it becomes the uncles and the aunties of the child. And to the one who is linked to the milk, yani the men, it's the same as mentioned, meaning that his ancestors and also his children and great-grandchildren and siblings, all, and it becomes the paternal aunties and uncles and so on. As for the nurse child, the mahram only extends to his any descendants, to his any only descendants, and it does not any involve his other family members, yani his mother or his father or his yani siblings. They are not any included any in the mahram, only him. Aywa. So now we have completed the part any about wet nursing. Now we have entered any into the last part any of this kitab, that is khutbatun nikah. And pertaining any to khutbatun nikah, there is not much any to be explained, unless any if I take any the time any to explain word for word the contents any of the khutbatun nikah. But what is important any in the khutbatun nikah? First thing any we have to understand that it is a sunnah. Before the aqdun nikah yani is done, it is a sunnah yani that we do a sermon. That we do any a sermon. Just like any, for example, the sermon any of the Eid prayer. That after yani you do the Eid prayer, it is a sunnah yani to do the khutbah. But when it comes to aqdun nikah, the khutbah yani is the khutbah sunnah yani to do before any the nikah. Pertaining yani to Jummah prayers yani it is wajib. Khutbah yani is wajib. And you will find that the contents any of khutbatul nikah is about the same as the content of khutbatul Jummah, but the difference any is in the topic. Where contents any of khutbatul nikah, the contents any is about nikah. Yani the person any who reads any the khutbah will read some verses any of the Quran pertaining to nikah, or hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pertaining any to nikah, and then he make praise Allah subhanahu wa taala, say the kalimah shahada, salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wasiat any with taqwa, the recitation any of the verse any pertaining to nikah, and the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then close any with the dua for the bride and for the bridegroom. And then after that, then only any they proceed any with the solemnization any of the nikah. So this is basically the chapter any that we are going through. Now continue.
Marriage sermon. The sermon read before the marriage contract. It is encouraged for the legal guardian or husband or other than them from the attendees of the gathering to do a sermon before the marriage contract with the sermon which has been narrated, and it is known as the Sermon of Need. It has been narrated by Imam Abu Dawud in his Sunan with an authentic chain from Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. He said Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us the Sermon of Need.
Now basically what the author is saying is that this khutbah is based on the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So every time a person gets married, it is sunnah for someone to recite the khutbatul nikah. It can be the husband who is going to get married. It can be the wali, the wali of the girl, or it can be other than them. But what is important is somebody has to say out the khutbatul nikah. And this is sunnah. Sunnah meaning if a person does not do the khutbatul nikah, it doesn't have any effect to the nikah. But when we speak about sunnah, meaning it gives barakah. Of course, when we begin the majlis by recitation of the Quran or the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wasiyat taqwa, there will be barakah. So it is important. Now continue.
It has also been narrated by Imam Ibn Majah with an addition from what is narrated by Imam Abu Dawud in one of his narrations. Here we will be mentioning additional narration by Imam Ibn Majah.
Now this is based on a hadith narrated by Al-Imam Ibn Majah. Ibn Majah is muhaddith. So he narrated the hadith, and this is what we will read. Now.
All praises are due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek help from Him, and we seek forgiveness from Him. We seek refuge with Allah from our own evil self and our bad deeds.
Now, so the khutbatul nikah begin with praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Arabic we call it hamdalah. Just like in khutbah Jum'ah also, there must be hamdalah. So either we say alhamdulillah or inna alhamdulillah. This is the meaning of Hamdalah. So we have to begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aywa?
Whosoever Allah guides, then there shall be no one who can misguide him.
Now, this is one of the type of khutbah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. There is a meaning, and he said that whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide, the person will be guided. Whom Allah wants the person to be astray, he will be astray. Meaning guidance only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aywa?
Whosoever Allah has led astray, then there is no guidance for him. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, the only one without any partner, and I bear witness that our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his servant and messenger.
Then the second thing after the hamdalah is the shahada. Yani ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Yani just like in the khutbatul Jumu'ah, usually this is what we say. After the hamdalah, we say out yani the kalima shahada. Aywa?
And I bear witness that our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his servant and messenger who has sent him with guidance in the true religion to make the religion be manifested above all religions, even though the qualities may be adverse.
Now, this based on the verse in the Quran, in Surah Muhammad, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى دِينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. Yani this is the wisdom behind the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to this ummah. Ayo.
Verily, Allah the Most High has made marriage permissible, and He encourages towards it. And He has forbid adultery, and He has promised a painful torment for those people who commit it.
Now, this is the content of the khutbah. Now, we have come into the content of the khutbah. Yani, after the kalima shahada, after any we say, Shadu an la ilaha illallah, Shadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and then praise the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haq. And then comes the content. So the content, and he say, for verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made marriage permissible, and He encouraged it towards it, and He has forbid adultery, and He has promised a painful torment for those people who commit. Yani ahallallahu nikah wa harrama as-safah. Allah make any nikah permissible and zina to be haram. Now,
Allah the Most High has said in accordance to its impermissibility and forbiddance from it, do not go near adultery.
Now this is also based on the verse in the Quran, wala taqrabu zina. Yani do not come near yani to zina. So marriage is one of the things that is encouraged in Islam to protect oneself from committing all these vices. Aywa?
Allah the Most High has said, O people, fear your Lord, the one who has created you from a single soul, Adam, and from it He has created its mate, Hawa, and He has scattered from both of them many men and women. And fear Allah, by whom you demand one of another your rights.
Now this is another part. That is wasiyah bi taqwa. And one of the contents in the khutbah nikah is to remind people about God consciousness. We have taqwa to Allah. And this is based on the verse in the Quran, and also where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. This is in Surah Al-Imran. Then Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidatin wa khalaqa minha zawjaha wa bassa minhuma rijalan kathiran wa nisaa. Again, it is about having God consciousness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continue.
And to the ties of relationship, surely Allah ever watches over you. And Allah the Most High has said, O believers, fear Allah and say the right words. He will put your deeds into a right state for you and forgive you your faults. And whosoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, he has attained a mighty success.
Now the benefits of taqwa, that if a person has taqwa to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah will give him success. Allah will give him any blessing and mercy. All these things will be open for him. Aywa?
Marriage is the way sunnah of the prophets and the symbol of the saints.
Now this is a sunnah of the prophets. They are, what you call it, encourage. They encourage their ummah to get married based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa inni mubahin bikumul umam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned tazawwajul waluda wal wadud. Marry women who are, what you call it, this fertile and also loving. Fa inni mukasirun bikumul umam. Or the Prophet said, fa inni mubahin bikumul umam. I'll be proud of you yawm al-qiyamah by having a lot of ummah. So it is encouraged in Islam for marriage. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he got married with his wives, and also any prophets before him. Now,
Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, marriage is my way, sunnah, and whosoever dislikes my way, sunnah, then he is not amongst my nation.
Naam.
And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, marry fertile and loving woman. Verily, I will be proud with the great number of my nation above other nations on the day of
Now,
resurrection.
all this hadith is pertaining to the virtues, virtues of marriage. Now, continue.
I counsel all of you and myself to fear Allah.
Now, again, this wasiyah bi taqwa, yani to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why it is important yani to speak about taqwa before marriage? Because in marriage also, yani a person must have taqwa, correct? Because marriage yani is a kind of ibadah. Because there are responsibilities yani as a husband, responsibilities yani as the wife. So basically, this kind of sermon yani is reminding the person yani who is going to get married that he will enter yani into a life where he will have any responsibilities yani as a husband, as the father. So make any the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the provision. The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a provision, yani because only by the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a person yani will be granted any success in dunya and akhirah. Aywa?
I seek forgiveness from Allah the Almighty for myself and all of you and for our forefathers and for all Muslims.
Now, then it comes in the istighfar. This encourage. Because we spoke about the conditions of the wali, the conditions of the witness, that they must be upright people. Otherwise, in the marriage, will not be valid, correct? So that is why before the aqd nikah, it is encouraged for the qadi, that who does the nikah, to remind the people to make istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask Allah for forgiveness, make tawbah. So inshallah, by Allah accepting any tawbah, inshallah, the marriage is more towards a valid form of marriage. Aywa?
Seek forgiveness from Allah. Verily, He is the most forgiving and the most merciful. Say, all of you, I seek forgiveness from Allah.
So this one, the qadi, the person is saying, he is saying to all of the people in the majlis. So all of you, all together, we do the istighfar. And normally in our country, this is what we do, correct? There will come any moment anywhere, all of us will do astaghfirullah together. Aywa?
We seek forgiveness from Allah. We seek forgiveness from Allah. We believe in Allah and whatever that has come from Allah according to Allah's will. We believe in the messenger of Allah and whatever that has come from the messenger of Allah according to the way of the messenger of Allah. We believe in the Sharia. We attest to the truth of the Sharia. We have freed ourselves from every religion which is against the religion of Islam. We seek refuge from Allah from abomination. We seek refuge with Allah from abandoning the prayers. We seek refuge with Allah from every single thing which is disliked by Allah.
So this encourage all of the people who are attending the nikah to say this together. All the way, from nastaghfirullah, then amanna billah, bima ja'a anillah, wa ala muradillah, amanna bi rasulillah, wa bima ja'a ani rasulillah, ala muradi rasulillah, amanna bi shari'ah, wa saddaqna bi shari'ati, wa tabarra'na min kulli dinin يخالف دين الإسلام نعوذ بالله من المنكرات نعوذ بالله من ترك الصلوات نعوذ بالله من جميع ما يكره الله. So some in marriage will get these meanings. So usually one person will say it out, the others will repeat. But not all marriage, wallahu alam, nowadays that have this. But I think most cases the qadi will recite. Now, the wisdom behind all of this basically is first thing is to make istighfar, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, and the second thing is to recite the kalima shahada and to recite our pledge that we believe in Allah, we believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we believe in everything that Allah has commanded, we believe in everything that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has brought, and so on. This is basically to renew iman. It's basically to renew our iman, and it is a form of da'wah actually. It is a form of da'wah to remind people about Allah, to remind people about fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, about the importance of returning to Allah and obeying Him and so on and so forth. Now,
method of dictating the marriage contract.
Okay, then after the khutbatul nikah, now comes in the time for the solemnization. Now, so now he is going to explain how to go about doing it. Continue.
The two persons, the guardian and the prospective groom, who are involved in the marriage contract should clutch each other's hand. The one who dictates the marriage contract to the both of them should instruct them to say together, in the name of Allah, praise be to Allah the Most High. Peace and blessings be upon our master, the messenger of Muhammad, messenger of Allah, Muhammad the son of Abdullah.
Now, so the handshake, the wali and the wali and the person who is getting married. So he said, Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Rasulillah Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasallam. Now, continue.
May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. Then the one who dictates the marriage contract will say to the guardian, say, O Fulan, the son of Fulan, I marry you off according to what Allah has instructed, from holding on to the marriage with goodness or to leave it, divorce, with kindness. I have married you off to my daughter Fulana, the daughter of Fulan al-Fulani, with the dowry of so and so ounce of pure silver, or I have married you off on behalf of the one who has commissioned me to marry her off, Fulana, the daughter of Fulan al-Fulani, with the dowry of so and so ounce of pure silver. The prospective groom will reply, I have accepted her marriage with the dowry mentioned.
Now, this is basically the example of talqin. Yani, like in Hadramaut, for example, the person, the qadi, for example, will come and then will instruct the wali to say all these words. So, telling the wali, for example, say, O Fulan bin Fulan, I marry you off according to what Allah has instructed, from holding on to the marriage with goodness, all these things. So the wali will say, while holding the hands of the man, of the husband, future husband. And then after that, he begins with the contract. Yani by saying, I have married you off to my daughter, Fulana binti Fulan, with the dowry of so and so. Dowry of so and so. Or I have married you off on behalf of the one who has commissioned me to marry you off. This is a wakil. Sometimes a person, he marry off somebody else by wakil. Yani a person he gives like he dedicate or delegate somebody else to perform the marriage. And most cases in Singapore is delegate, correct? The Naib Qadi comes into the majlis. Sometimes even the wali do not want to commission the marriage. So what they will do is they will delegate to the Naib Qadi. So the Naib Qadi will say commission, to commission the marriage. If the Naib Qadi says my daughter, then the Naib Qadi daughter will be married into the person. So this is important. That's why our scholars always taught us the importance of words and that is used. Because you use the wrong word, somebody else get married. It can happen. It's not impossible. It can happen. But after that happen, then what to do? Some people say, continue.
Then the guardian will say to the prospective groom again, O Fulan, son of Fulan, I have nikah you off to my daughter as mentioned with the dowry mentioned.
Now then he mentioned, I have accepted her marriage with the dowry mentioned. Khalas. I accepted the marriage and with the dowry mentioned. So now the nikah is valid. Correct? Now there is ijab and qabul. Ijab from the wali, qabul from the husband. The husband say, I accepted. I have accepted a marriage with the dowry mentioned. This is enough. Now continue. Then second time, because it is encouraged, like the scholars in Hadramaut they encourage 3 times. 3 times any repetition. Although nowadays in Singapore what I see is only 1 time. But down there they encourage 3 times. Later inshallah I'll explain why. Continue.
I have nikah you off on behalf.
You have to khatam first.
I have nikah you off on behalf of the one who has commissioned me to marry her off. Then the husband will reply, I have accepted her nikah with the dowry mentioned.
Now, first time by saying zawwajtuka. Zawwajtuka ibnati fulana binti fulan. The second time ankahtuka, and he used any different word. First time used tazwij, the second time he used inkah, because these are the 2 words that can be used in nikah. Because the Quran only use any tazwij and nikah. Now, continue.
It is highly encouraged to make supplications for the bride and the groom after the marriage contract. The one who will be supplicating should say, May Allah the Most High bless you. May Allah the Most High bless upon you. May Allah the Most High gather both of you in goodness.
Now, the sunnah to make dua for the bride and the bridegroom. Now, barakallahu laka wa barakallahu alaykuma wa jama'a bainakuma fi khair wa afiyah. Memorize what Mahizin said in his song. Everybody know him. That's right. Mahizin came out with the song. I think everybody, even people who don't know Arabic also, they can memorize. MashaAllah. Yeah, da'wah also. Yeah, this is ajib. And you see sometimes because you have a song, it affects millions of people. Millions of people, MashaAllah, this is subhanallah. Now, continue.
It is also highly encouraged to invite a group of righteous people during a marriage contract apart from the 2 witnesses and the guardian.
Now, this is very important. When it comes to Aqdul Nikah, Do not only think any about our friends, for example, in school, like. But what is important is to be aware of pious people and old people. Invite them into the Aqdul Nikah. Because why? They are witness and we are in need of their witnessing. These are upright people. Before we go on earlier, I mentioned 3 times, correct, man? First one is by saying zawajtuka. Second time by saying ankahtuka. Third time is combination. Zawajtuka wa ankahtuka. Zawajtuka wa ankahtuka ibnati fulana binti fulan bil mahri kada wa kada. Then the man and he will say, qabiltu tazwijaha wa nikahaha bil mahri al mazkur. I accept the tazwij and the nikah. So the first time by saying zawajtuka ibnati. Second time ankahtuka ibnati. Third time zawajtuka wa ankahtuka ibnati. So altogether how many times? 3 times. Even in Malay and English also when we say it out in our language. So the husband and he reply how many times? The husband and he reply 3 times. Inshallah becomes sah. 3 times. Inshallah it is sah. So the reason why scholars of Haramun does this because to emphasize. Because to them nikah is very very important. Establishment of nikah, it has a lot of effects in marriage, and also in inheritance, and so on, in progeny, in nasab, and so on and so forth. Now, continue.
It is also encouraged to make the marriage known and to hold it in the mosque.
Now, it is sunnah to make the marriage known. That is why it is a sunnah to beat this duf. There's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wadribu alayha bid-duf. Or kama qala sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Pertaining to the hadith pertaining to marriage, the Prophet mentioned this duf. You know what's duf? Like in Malay we call it kompang. This is a sunnah. And to do it in a masjid. Although some of scholars mention nowadays better not to do in a masjid. Because why? You're free mixing. The problem now, you do in a masjid, you see, becomes like a marketplace. This is the problem today. That's why our scholars mentioned it is better not to do in a masjid. Because why? To guard the sanctity of the masjid. Now, there's fatwa by the Mufti of Tarim and he just came out about this. Even in Yemen also they are experiencing this. How about people in Singapore? But this is what we see in this. Ayo?
To make the marriage known and to hold it in the mosque and for it to be in the month of Shawwal on a Friday morning.
Now, on Friday morning and sunnah you need to be on Fridays, and because Friday is barakah. Ayo?
It is also encouraged to request the guardian and the witnesses to repent before the marriage contract should there be hidden transgression.
Now, guardian and witnesses, because one of the conditions of the guardian and witness, they must be upright. That's what we mentioned. So it is important. Continue a bit more.
It is also encouraged to witness the bride's consent when her consent is needed.
Now, need to have witness, but it is not wajib. Need to have any witnesses to the consent of the bride. Just in case the bride after the marriage and he say that I do not give any consent. So if you have witness at least something. Just in case. Especially if she is not a virgin. Because the consent must be from her. Correct or not? If she is not any virgin. Even for a virgin also we ask the consent. To play safe. What you call it, and also you need to have witnesses. Now.
However, it is not part of the condition for the validity of the marriage. Even if the one who will be marrying her off is a ruler.
No.
The condition
ruler meaning wali hakim. Continue.
The condition is that the ruler believes the one who informs him that she has given her permission for her marriage.
Now, as long as the ruler knows that she has consent, then he can proceed with the marriage. But to witness to have any witness to that consent, this is what the author is speaking about. Witness to the consent. Clear inshallah? Type Allah knows best. Okay, continue. Conclusion. This is also important. Although we have completed the kitab, but this is what the author will say. Now.
Conclusion. This is the end of what Allah the Most High has guided me to compile, and it is hope that Allah the Most High will honor me by making this book beneficial to the masses. We hope from Allah that He bestow upon the reader with openings and elevation. Peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All praises be to Allah, the Lord of all universes.
No.
The completion of authoring this book was on the night of Thursday, 25 Jumadul Ula, 1379 from the Muhammadan Hijrah. May peace, blessing and respect be upon the one who did the Hijrah, authored by the one who is in need of Allah the Most High, Muhammad bin Salim bin Hafiz bin Abdullah bin Abu Bakr bin Aidrus bin Al-Hussein bin Al-Sheikh Abu Bakr bin Salim Al-Alawi Al-Hussein Al-Hadrami Al-Shafi'i. May Allah accept him and forgive him. Ameen.
Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Before when we close, anybody setting Fatiha for the author. The date that he got is 25th November 1959, and in our calendar is the year 1959. So this book is about how many years? About 60 years ago. And Alhamdulillah, I have the privilege to study this book. My sanad to the author is to my teacher, Sheikh Abdul Rahman Baraja. Sheikh Abdul Rahman Baraja. This is my first teacher and who studied Kitab al-Miftah from. And they said my second teacher is Sheikh Taha al-Hamadi. So inshallah we recite Surah Al-Fatiha and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless Al-Habib Muhammad bin Salim and bin Hafiz, that Allah bless him and with elevation in his degrees and into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and may Allah bless him and with good, great any rewards, and may Allah also bless all of us and with the understanding and of deen, and that with knowledge and your benefit. And with this intention inshallah we recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Al-Fatiha.